Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the next session. Next session is meaning of privacy in the age of sensors, augmentations, gamification, and algorithms. We all know that different kind of in the age of technology there are new ways of how you utilize the information and how you extract the information, and that impacts privacy in one or the other way. In this session, we are going to talk about how in the age of technology, in the age of sensors, what are the various ways through which privacy gets impacted, and what are the various solutions, or what are the various proposals, policy decisions that are coming in the way that can actually make privacy a much realized reality. So for this, I would like to welcome on stage our chair, Mr. AP Singh, who is Deputy Director General of UIDAI. So please welcome. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Apar Gupta, who is partner, Advani and Company. Next, Mr. R. Ramamurthy Gemini, who is Chairman of Cyber Security and Privacy Foundation. We have had a replacement in this session. Mr. Pratap Singh, President, IT Operations, Ibibo Group, could not make it to this session. Instead, Mr. Vinayak Godse, Director Data Protection, DSCI, will be part of this session. So with these words, I hand over the mic to Mr. AP Singh to take the discussions ahead. Over to you, sir.
Speak from here. Thanks a lot. Pleasure to be here, and the panel has already been introduced. We have a very diverse and a eminent one at that. Experts in their different fields. I'm probably the only generalist. Must confess that when this invitation came to chair this session, I did feel honored, but with a pinch of salt, because usually on forums like this, the UIDAI and its representatives are called more in the nature of prime suspects rather than people who might be doing things to resolve issues or problems. So be it. And I think the general strategic thought behind getting people like me into these forums is कि ये वैसे तो सुनते नहीं है, पर यहाँ आके कुछ तो समझ में आएगा. What are the issues? So I'm going to be a good listener besides talking to you guys. Now in this case, past masters like Dr. Bajaj was also involved in the process. So to entirely preempt and put me on the defensive, he also said कि आप PowerPoint presentation नहीं करेंगे. So my standard stuff is not with me, and then I asked him कि PowerPoint presentation नहीं करेंगे तो क्या करेंगे? तो he virtually said कि आप किससे कहानियाँ सुनाइए, they go down better with the audience. Audience तो ऐसे भी है ही नहीं, but I guess since my turn has come, तो मैं अपने एक दो किस्से कहानियाँ सुनाई देता हूँ. It was actually last evening I was looking at the papers and preparing to come here and preparing myself actually at that point of time. So a friend walked in after a long time, and he was looking remarkably fit and in a good condition. So I asked him, boss, what's happened? You seem to be a transformed person. You've lost weight, you're looking healthy, you're looking bright, and you're looking live. So what's up? So he said he showed me a dark watch which he was wearing, and he says कि सब घड़ी का कमाल है. So I was a little intrigued कि what has the ghadi got to do with this? So he said, oh, ghadi's got everything to do with it. And he unstrapped his wristwatch and showed me. So uske piche there were about 6-7, sensors which were splashing, and then he kind of pressed, one button and the second button, and but basically he says that, look, you know that I am a laid-back person, but I get an alarm every day in the morning to get up. And so I rarely miss my morning runs, but if I do, then this device is smart enough to know that I missed it. So in the evening, it prompts me to go to the gym, so my exercise is perfect. So I said, well, that's damn good. Then he pressed another button, and on the screen of the watch it flashed that, he had run 4.7 kilometers yesterday. He said it's not just that. It also tracks the number of calories that I have consumed, and he flashed another button and which showed that about 1400 all calories he had consumed. By then he was on a demo mode, and he says ke aur bhi hai. Maine kaha aur kya hai? So when he flashed another button, he pressed another button, and it came out that the number of calories or whatever it was that he had expended. So, well, that's great. Then he pushed another button and he showed me that when I took this watch off, my pulse rate was this. So that was 77. I said, भाई कमाल हो गया, घड़ी ने बिल्कुल ही कमाल कर रखा है, and now I understand how it's helped you to get into such great shape. So he said, yeah, these things just don't end out here. My vital parameters and the kind of things that I've told you are continuously sent by this watch to my doctor, who is able to kind of track the status of my health, and it doesn't stop at my doctor, it even goes to my wife, and he says, that she is a health freak, and makes sure that I skip nothing, I don't do anything. So I was astounded. I said, this is really good. I mean, except everything is great except that it enables your wife to keep tabs on you, but बाकी तो बहुत ही बढ़िया लग रहा है. So he still continued in his salesperson tone, and he says that not only do I benefit in terms of a good health, but if I stick to certain predefined goals and parameters, I earn points, and those points give me a free, all paid for, luxury holiday in a 5-star hotel and in a spa. So my thought was, and I told him this only, कि फिर तो कंपनी को घड़ी बेचनी बड़ी मुश्किल, बड़ी महंगी पड़ती होगी भाई आपको. तो नहीं, इसमें घड़ी वाले कंपनी का कुछ लेना देना नहीं है. So it was कि किसका लेना देना है. तो he says it's a clear, straight deal. I'm on medication, and the pharmaceutical company whose medicines I buy, they pay for these my 5-star hotels and spas. All that I have to do is that every month when I get my supplies of medicines, I have to feed the batch number, and I have to meet certain specified parameters. If I meet them, I get the points, and I I stay in good shape, I get my perks and everything else. So I thought, I said that all this is very good, but I mean, doesn't this kind of overstep limits a little? Doesn't it kind of breach your privacy? So, I mean, this was an example of gamification, taking place. So his point was, nahin, I'm doing this voluntarily, and I'm doing it willingly, I'm doing it with consent. So where is the problem? And I was saying, does it kind of breach any of your legal rights and things like that? He said, no, it doesn't do anything. Nothing is involved, and it's a conscious decision. This is good for me, and there are absolutely no issues on this. So I told him, yaar, ye to bahut achhi cheez hai, but would you be willing to stand up and say all this in the court where usually we stand these days as one of our witnesses? So, I mean, that of course was in the lighter vein, but that took me to, you people would be reading in the media about the UID being hauled up and placed in the court for all kinds of things, and it reminded me of a lawyer friend who's not our counsel, but I mean, he was asking me that, kya hai, what is this whole problem? Why are you people being hauled up? Samasya kya hai? So I said, I explained things to him, so he said, okay, so what you are trying to say is that when I enroll for UID, at source as the data is entered, it's getting encrypted with 2048-bit public key, private key and everything. I said, yeah, that's true. So he says, that's secure. I said, yeah, it's secure. Then he says that you're also saying that safe protocols are used to transmit this to your data center. So I said, yeah. So he said, फिर उसमें क्या problem है? कोई problem नहीं है. Then he said that at your data center, you take care to anonymize this data, you partition it, you make sure that the biometrics are never stored online, in terms of raw images, etc., etc. So I said, yeah, we do all this. So he said, but then where is the problem? I said, problem ये है कि हमारी बात कोई मानता ही नहीं है. We keep saying that ये भी करते हैं, ये भी करते हैं, ये भी करते हैं. तो इसे तुम्हारी बात नहीं मानते तो क्या कहते हैं? तो मैंने कहा भैया वो ये कहते हैं कि no, he first asked me, he says कि अच्छा, but then is there any technology that if you are preserving, let's say, biometrics, which are personal sensitive data, if they are collected, stored, transmitted and stored in the manner that you're saying, and they're passively kept like this, so is there any technology that in this passive state they can be used to profile or track people as people are alleging? So I said, not that I know of. So then his point was, then what are people saying? So I said, yeah, what they are saying is that in Jharkhand, when a Narega worker will put her finger as a mark of attendance for coming to work, they are saying the government will come to know that so-and-so worked under Narega. He said, what's the problem there? We don't know what's the problem. And I said that in Andhra Pradesh, if someone below the poverty line goes to a fair price shop and takes his rations and puts his finger, they are saying that's problematic because the state government will come to know that this vyakti ne ration liya. I said in Maharashtra, in somewhere in Wardha district, if the old man who's taking an old age pension, again they are saying that if he puts his finger, then the government will come to know that this guy has withdrawn his pension. So he said, but where is the problem? I said, problem is that they are saying that the government is tracking and profiling all these people by doing this. So his point was, well, why in the world would the government be interested in tracking a Narega worker, a PDS beneficiary, old age pensioner? उनको track करके मिलेगा क्या government को? तो हमने कहा भाई हमारी तरफ से तो you get a better service, there's transparency, there's auditability, there is accountability, efficiencies grow, but they say, this is breach of privacy, it's shifting the balance of power between the state and the individual, the concept of limited governance is being breached, basic features of the constitution are getting violated in the case. I mean, his subjective view was, he said, yeah, this is all bloody nonsense. I mean, there's clearly a balance can be drawn that technology may be intrusive, being used for public good is one thing, and being used with consent upfront in a regulated manner is one kind of a thing, where it's being used surreptitiously without consent for a private good is something else. And he said, in any case, the government of India would be entirely mad that if they want to, assuming that they are not interested in tracking the PDS, Narega and other people, to come out with a new project and spend 12,000 crores of rupees on the UID, although critics say that it's 150,000 crores, but it's actually 12,000 crore, enrolling 120 crore people for the program, doing a process re-engineering of all the schemes that the state and central governments run only to use biometrics so that they can track the residents, because his point was that anyone who matters and who's worth tracking, let's say that's the intention, is on a mobile phone. So what is it that the government today can't do if it wishes to, in terms of tracking and profiling a person in terms of a mobile phone? It's easy to find out who one is talking to, it's easy to find out what one is talking to, your movements can be tracked, your location can be tracked. So that's something which is happening, which can happen, and you don't need a new program or a new project to do that. So I told him, well, that's the kind of challenge that is before us, to convince the people of this country as well as members of the civil society and the courts. And that's probably what this whole debate is about, and I guess today's forum is all about, that there is technology which is continuously growing. Nobody can stop either evolution of technology or its applications, because in some ways technology is like free will. It's there on its own volition, but yeah, you can flank it, you can regulate it. And some important issues which I guess my colleagues here will comment on, and some of you will also, is really what are those boundaries? Can technology, what's the point of interface and balance between intrusive technology and public good? To what extent ethically can it be used on a consent-based basis, as against being deployed surreptitiously? Its use for private good, which doesn't have to be discounted always, or where there are trade-offs, like my friend who just thought that he's in good health and the technology is helping him to do that, although sensors are doing a great job, but his pharmaceutical company, knows almost everything about his health, as long as he's getting his holidays in Bangkok, he thinks it's perfectly good. So, well, it's good for him, but may not be good for someone else. So these are all vexed questions, and I guess we look forward to an interesting discussion with people who are here on these issues, and I'll request Mr. Ramamurthy to come in and sharpen and add to the points that I have made more as a generalist. He is more specialist, and I think even in terms of the number of hair we have on our head, clearly the more enlightened one. So, sir.
Good day, all of you. Mr. A.P. Singh has set the tone for the panel discussion, and let me try to continue that. Let me perhaps take two aspects. One is, I will take the society's perspective, that is user perspective, and the industry perspective. By user perspective, I mean the netizen, individual perspective. DSCI has given a good caption for the panel today. I'm sure that some of you might have looked into the internet and checked up the meaning of and relevance of gamification and augmentation, and exactly their relevance to the privacy issues. On that fond hope, I do not wish to spend any time of my allotted time here. Let me, however, confine myself to a single point that's called Internet of Things. And let me perhaps try to explain to you how exactly the panel topic is relevant and pertinent to the Internet of Things, which I will call as IoT. In my opinion, this aspect of focusing on IoT will cover several other issues like virtualization, BYOD, BYOA, or big data, or cloud computing, etc., etc. Those things will also be covered by this, because they are all, basically the point is the same. Well, the prerogative of naming anything in the IT industry is always to the credit of USA. And whatever they do, that's being strictly followed by the other countries. Whether we agree whether the name is appropriate or not, but I personally feel that this Internet of Things name has been very aptly given. It's a very simple and vague term, but at the same time it covers a very big canvas and ambit. Well, I thought in the beginning to list what are all the things that Internet of Things can possibly do for an individual, for a company, or for a big concern or a manufacturing concern and all that. But I thought that the exercise will lead me nowhere, because I could get so many ideas out of that. Most of them have already been, some work has been already started. And but then I thought, let me not waste time, as it may be easily understood by you, because it is, creativity is the limit. Whatever you want to do, you can go ahead on that, if only you have the resources for it. And but let me just sum it up. Whatever little I have understood, let me share with you. It is the web connecting of gadgets and devices, and the stored data of which will be available to you and to others who can have access to your data. Even if perhaps you are sleeping and coughing at the same time, there can be a mechanism by which next day morning it will tell you how many times you coughed during the night. You need not have a feeling that I coughed all the night. It will give you precisely the number of times that you cough. I'm just telling this to you as an example. And well, as the panel discussion is going to be only on privacy issues, I don't want to dwell more on the Internet of Things, excepting mentioning that it's going to be a great time for gadget enthusiasts. Any details about your vehicles, about your clothes that you wear, your household applications, the various paraphernalia connected with it, cooking, your office routines, monitoring your employees or servants, observation of your likes and dislikes, all can be recollected for your reference at a later time, and it will be available as a record. Gadgets are going to come in the next few months. Already many gadgets have come and some more gadgets are on the way. If you do not mind your personal details available to others as a record, there is absolutely no problem. you are safe. But if it happens otherwise, it will be a solid proof of all your weaknesses and misadventures that you never wished others should know. All that will be available without any doubt or any clarification. The other people can take it as an evidence. Say, for example, you are a smoker and your family and your doctors put a taboo on your smoking. But there can be a small system by which it can exactly tell you how many puffs of cigarettes you used that day or the previous day or the whole of last month. A record will be available. And I feel that perhaps it will be a good tool for the crime investigation, cybercrime cell investigation, that for their work, because when the subject is caught by them, then immediately, nowadays they look for a cell phone to take the cyber forensics. People are also using this mobile phone as an evidence and get all the details of whom all he contacted, who else contacted him, the telephone numbers of those parties and all that. So this perhaps even they can plant something in the various telephones by which these things will be available. Well, after all this, you want me to say anything about the meaning of privacy? I think it is enough properly done. But I would like to add that privacy is a relative term. It varies very much between country to country, person to person, time to time, and context to context. That aspect should also be looked into in the mind. Let me stop with this, and as the panel discussion goes on, let me react to you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'll briefly talk about this subject and with an example. Is anybody in this room knows toothbrush coming with sensors? Toothbrush that has sensor. So the sensors in the toothbrush, if at all it comes, what it will do? What will be the role of sensor in the toothbrush? Anything? Any guess? Count the number of things. So it could be one is health related issue, but many of the sensors which is coming in the toothbrush, which tracks your habit of brushing your teeth. And you must be knowing that some of the geographies in the Western world, they are very much keen on your insurance, dental insurance. And this habit of brushing your teeth is creating information. And this information can be used for multiple purposes. So this information can be used by insurance provider. They can run some algorithm based on how you brush your teeth and what kind of habit you have, and they can think about the premium of your insurance policy. So these kind of sensors which are tracking your biological habits and tracking your physiological habits, and when they are getting connected to internet and they are generating huge among us information which were not available till the time to the people, and this information when it is get connected and some algorithm which sits behind tracks this information, try to extract the information. This information can be used for a commercial purpose also. It can be used for many other purpose also. So the algorithms which would be processing this kind of information, and probably this information may not get categorized as sensitive personal information in the future or in the current context also. So these algorithms which is processing the information, so they will create many things for those organizations those who like to exploit this information. And that's why when sensor connects to the internet, and this internet, all the transactions which creates the information and which exchange the information, and somebody else sitting with a very new kind of innovation that people are trying about, means in fact It has been talked about as a solutionism, means all the Silicon Valley talks about solutions around the data. So big data is a very buzzword nowadays. So the solution comes as an analytics piece, an algorithm that works on the personal information. They will create huge issues for the privacy. Much of the issues which would not able to even confine to the kind of legal boundaries were able to create till now for the privacy. So in that case, these algorithms would create a lot of issue, and then comes something called as a gamification. Imagine the Silicon Valley talks about using technology to change the societal and individual behavior also. So for example, if he does something good and the information which captures what he's doing and what he's been working, that information can be used by a gamification kind of algorithm, and a score can be given to him. And this score can be published to his social media site. And there will be some scores which will be categorized as a well behavior of the individual. Means there will be some incentives that will be given to individual that he has behaved in a particular way. So this score which will be published there, so some gamification algorithms can work for that one, and it will create some kind of a benchmark in the society. So this is where. So there is one project. Anybody knows about some project called the BinCam? BinCam is a project which is been experimented in UK. What it does, it has iPhone installed in a dustbin. The way you trash your dust in a day, it takes the picture of that one, and it sees the way you are able to categorize it, and there are different kind of bins, and it sees how well you are organized that dust in your house, and accordingly it gives the score which can be published on social media. Somebody using sensors in a mobile phone to provide a score in social media. So this gamification element which is being used to change the behavior of society and individual, in a way which is noble objective, but at the same time it creates very interesting data items which can be processed by for the multiple commercial purposes. And the augmentation technology, which is probably, if you look at the Google Glass or Nokia augmentation technology enabled mobile phones, wherever you go, you get more information about the things that you are maneuvering. And this augmentation also would not only help you to get very deep understanding of the thing that you are looking at. For example, if I am looking at this bottle, so it will give me more information about this bottle. But at the same time, I will looking at the environment also, I will looking at the people also. And then I will be collecting the information which is more than necessary for my own understanding, for my own requirement and purpose. So implementing or enforcing some of the privacy principles like consent, how would be that be? So privacy principles implementation against institution or organizations will be very easier one. But those who are wearing the Google Glass, wearing the wearable computers, how will you enforce the privacy principle? I think Apar will throw some light on that part. So these are the areas probably they will create. At this point of view, we are just debating on very primitive issues with respect to the privacy. But these are new thing which is coming up, and that will be changing the paradigm for the privacy. And how would that impact our personal right? What kind of information which would be very sensitive information? Because people will be compiling all this information about you. But there will be some sensitive information. If you connect that to that set of information that people are compiling about you, it will make that information complete. So how would you protect your privacy right in that scenario? Because at this point in time, the privacy regime is the most to the conventional transaction that we have been doing. So that's the question that I would like to raise in this debate. So I think from the legal side, Apar could able to take it more.
Thank you, Vinayak, for throwing the ball in my court. Firstly, I would just like to commence with a very rudimentary understanding of privacy and from which it originates and to where we have come till now. Also, I'll be taking some portion of time to show what is the current legal landscape with respect to privacy and where we are headed approximately. The origin of privacy by itself as a right owes itself to a famous law review article in the Harvard Law Review authored by Warren and Brandis, whereby they posited that in physical places such as houses, homes, and even personal cupboards, lockers. A person had privacy from unwarranted intrusion by the state. They came up with a famous metaphor that a man's house is his castle. In a sense, a castle having high walls, shielding you from the world and away from prying eyes. And they stated that such privacy is necessary for the growth of individual expression, as well as choices which are away from the scrutiny and moral choices of society, as opposed to legal regulation. For society may regulate our behavior in certain legal ways, but it may not be able to regulate our moral choices, because we know reasonably that most of our behavior is driven towards moral compliances as opposed to legal compliances. Going forward, privacy in India by itself is being created through litigations in the Supreme Court of India, which were again against state intrusion and surveillance, physical surveillance of people who were suspected of committing crimes or had the potential to commit crimes. These are two leading cases where there was a dissent by a Supreme Court judge in Govind, which then got carried forward to in fact law by itself in the majority opinion in Kharag Singh. And what the court essentially stated that we all have a fundamental right to life, and privacy is one of the pegs of this right to life. Of course, the court has also interpreted other facets of the right to life, including the right against noise pollution. And hence, this was one such interpretation which was given to the right to life, which was the right to privacy. However, at the same point of time, the court did not completely and comprehensively set the contours of the right to privacy, leaving it to a case-by-case adjudication. So, we go to various aspects through litigations in future after the 1980s, whereby the People's Union for Civil Liberties in 1997 approaches the Supreme Court and says there are no legal regulations or safeguards for telephone interception, and the Supreme Court lays down guidelines. When a hospital faces a dilemma as to whether it should release the medical records of a HIV patient who is about to get married to his prospective spouse, which was the case of Mr. X versus Hospital Z, or also in cases of bodily integrity, where the court forces mandatory DNA samples. Now, what may be noticeable here is that most of the privacy prohibitions, as well as the concept of privacy, is being applied primarily against state instrumentalities, the public sector. With the growth of the internet and the opening up of the private sector, we have noticed that the concept of privacy is as relevant to private industry as to state, since its capability to gather data has increased as much as the state. For today, people turn over data voluntarily from sensors for incentives, sometimes which are incentivized through games, which have been pointed out by other panelists, or sometimes for even access to an email. So the ability to gather this data, in fact, creates a fiduciary duty and a duty of trust between a user and a company from which the user is availing these services. Now, till present, what we have is a fairly patchy and privacy law at a very low threshold, contained principally for the private sector under Section 43A of the Information Technology Act, which is prohibiting negligent disclosure of sensitive personal information. It does go towards defining sensitive personal information. However, these regulations, which have been subsequently made in 2011 under it, have been criticized for being incomplete and not for capturing the best practices in regulations which are existing abroad. Now, what are the best features of these regulations? Should, in fact, firstly, and this is my first prescription, I come to this panel today and I hope my youthful indiscretions of giving some prescriptions is excused by others, but the first prescription for any such privacy law is to, in fact, open up consultations for it. This has been acknowledged by the Department of Personnel and Training in the 2011 approach paper it published, whereby it recognized that there are different stakeholders to the privacy debate, including users, the government, as well as the private sector. All of them have different interests, and a privacy law should reflect a balance between all of them. Secondly, any such law should contemplate flexibility and should be oriented towards the future, because today the private sector, especially the IT industry, which to a large extent subsidizes its services by monetizing personal data and supplying advertisements, rests on business models which have not been contemplated yet. So a law will always be catching up if it's very tight and is very constrictive. And this has been highlighted by others on the panel. By the time a law may be placed, a new device may come into the market which may make it obsolete by itself. So we have to be flexible for the future. For this, we have to lay down certain broad principles, and to my estimation, this job to a large extent has already been done in March this year by Justice A.P. Shah, who has published a report on privacy whereby he's identified certain best practices and principles from foreign jurisdictions as well as international organizations. However, at the same time, we must be cautious to copy the approaches adopted abroad, in view that the foreign approaches themselves are in a state of flux and they are not certain. For instance, the EU Data Protection Directive, made way back in 1995, has been criticized regularly by companies for imposing onerous compliances and is in fact in a process of review before the EU Parliament itself. Finally, what does the private industry want? It wants users to trust them with their data. How will it achieve it? It will achieve them through clear, predictable, and achievable legal regulations. It is my view that private industry, in fact, is in favor of a privacy law and the definition of privacy which captures these features, at the same time guards individual privacy.
Thanks, Apar, and I'd like to thank my colleagues as well. Well, we are open for discussion and just identify yourself, please, and make a comment or an observation or a question.
I'm Vijay Kumar. I'm CISO of Tata Communications. In fact, it's very interesting that each one of you has presented a very diverse and very interesting facets of privacy. And I'd like to just ponder over a couple of points with regard to privacy, particularly as I'm an information security professional. The first thing that comes to my mind is what Apar talked about, the legal aspects of privacy. And I'd like to go a little bit to the basics of our society. And, they say the state is a social contract. The social contract that we inadvertently or otherwise every citizen makes, including a child which is born, whether it likes it or not, is a part of this contract. And the laws that are made need to be made by the representatives of this society through legislature. Now, the first point is whether the lawmaking actually takes into account the consent of the people of the state. Whether the representatives truly represent the views of the society is a question. Because the lawmakers can make the laws, of course, with a well-intentioned, legislature, but whether that legislature represents the society is a question mark. Because, as I said, the social contract is an unwritten contract. The second aspect that leaves me pondering about the explosion of devices and information, what Vinayak and Mr. Ramamurthy also spoke about, the sensors in a toothbrush. I tend to look at it, this technology, as it advances, more like a nuclear technology. There are non-proliferation treaties, non-proliferation initiatives on the one hand, Of course, nuclear energy has got the positive thing about generating, energy for human use. So that is the positive side of it. So I think there has got to be the kind of putting a limit on the technology, on the usage for whatever purposes. So there has got to be the other side of it, the restriction of the use of technology, and who is going to bring it about, how is it going to come, only, I think God only knows. Because if a sensor can be in a toothbrush, I am thinking tomorrow there will be a small chip in your brain, which are already coming up.
That is something we just discussed today morning itself.
Okay. So this
chip which can be implanted in your body.
Exactly.
That will generate a lot of information.
Exactly. People, they say, who have lost vision or hearing, there are chips that are going into the brain as sensors to feed it to the, to the brain, parts of the brain that actually recognize that particular, sensory organ. So we've got to, it's a very dangerous trend, and my ways of looking at it is that there got to be constraints on the use of information, on the capturing of information, because privacy, when I tried to draft a privacy policy for the company, I came across the definition that privacy is the right to be left alone. Now there is a physical privacy and there is the privacy of information. Slightly they are different things. It's only a question to ponder, because these are only questions. I don't think at the moment there may be any definitive answers, but it is a frightening prospect, because human beings, if we are limited to broken images and information and technology, the nature of human beings to imagine, to reflect, may be lost. I just ponder.
Thanks for your observations. If there's someone in the audience who wishes to comment on them, might be preferable, then we've had our turns to speak, and if not, we'll move to the next person in any case.
Hi, my name is Nehashish. I'm from Center for Internet and Society. So this is a very quick comment, and where are we heading towards? And this is actually mentioned by one of the authors of the book, which is Privacy, Due Process, and the Computational Turn. So the author of the book, Karjit DeVries, talks about the parable of 3 robotic dogs. So three families adopt 3 robotic dogs, and they are basically put out as guard dogs. So the first one is told that when you see a stranger, these are the rules. If he has a beard, if he looks shabby, if he's not dressed properly, you should bark or report it to the police. The second one is told that here are a few examples of bad people, and if you see something similar to this within this particular framework, then you should bark and report the police. And the third one, and the third family, it's hard that since criminals feed off prejudices of people and the normal perception of people about certain kind of criminals. The third dog was told that we will give you a month's time, and you should come back to us with particular categories, and you should categorize the criminals according to your standards. So after a month or so, the first family had to got into trouble because the dog called police. Yeah. So I'll just finish it here. So when we see that what has happened is the process of identification and after monitoring, and the monitoring has gone into the machines. And once the monitoring starts with the machines, the fault or the false negative or the false positive becomes huge, and that's where the problem lies. And if I may ask the panel to talk about the automation of monitoring which is going to happen or which may happen in India in the recent future.
I guess we are going to do that on the sideline, and I'm being told that the session must end now, but I'll kind of use the prerogative of being in chair to say that let's have one more question, observation, whatever. So actually there were 3, so the gentleman at the back has got the mic first.
By choice, I don't know. I just have an observation here. Yes, I have been trying to follow what's happening with the Industry 4.0, physical systems, cyber physical systems and other things. So if you look at the way that we have evolved over the years, it has been driven by the natural instincts and other things. But now we have reached a point where the technology is overtaking us. Should we allow that as individuals to happen? Because I read recently that in US, a person who had an implant, someone threatened saying, I can kill him from 10 meters away because it uses some cyber physical sensors and canvas and other things. And then I also read recently saying that you can control the thoughts of another person remotely by not physically telling him. These are very disturbing thoughts in my mind. Should we go along and then adapt the survival instincts and the natural things to drivers? Or would you like to get into a track where we are going to be driven by technology alone? It is not just the question of privacy, but it is the question of the way that we are going to evolve and the way that we are going to present ourselves to the future generation. That's important for us to do that. Think about it. And moreover, if you really look at it, many of these things are driven by commercial interests. It's not necessary that someone wants to give us a better toothbrush. It is driven by certain other commercial considerations. Would we like to subject ourselves to that force which is not under our control, which is under the control of someone else? We may find ourselves as technology slaves a little later, and we may not be able to lead a life of our own. I just would like to leave this thought behind.
I mean, for the rest of us, if anyone wants to make just say 20-second comments, then we leave it at that, and maybe these threads could be picked up sometimes.
I just want to correlate with the example which I handle day in and out, what is happening in US. See, in US, we all know that what is personal identification or personal PI data which is being handled and which is part of whatever you go to an app, you register, you download, you sign, everything. But in there, they classify one more thing which is called as NPPI, non-personal public private information. So once it is filtered and it is getting classified as NPPI data without the consent of the individual, whoever is the service provider has the obligation not to share it. So why should we not, I'm just not telling that why we should not follow that or not. So it has to be further customized to the context. Suppose if the context is a medical history or something, the insurer needs the personal data to reimburse his amount, that's all. So once that context is a business case, and that's definitely like we had a lot of gamification or something, with his consent he is gone for it, he has bought the device or he is a user of that, he is buying a diabetes medicine for ages, everything, he wants all those things. If consent is there, there is no problem. So once we are able to filter it and further classify it, I don't think so there is no issues. That's all. Thanks.
Let this be the last. You had a question. We'll close with this one.
I just had one very brief question. One of the key demands in the India-European trade negotiations is the fact that that they want a data secure status for India, and in the absence of a comprehensive privacy law, how do you think that thing plays out? That's my only brief question.
We will discuss on that. We have been working at the DSA on that part with European since last 3 years, but there is altogether different discussion as compared to the subject that we are talking about.
Thanks. We'll end with that. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I think this session can go till the end of the day also, but we just stop out here. I think the salutary framework that emerges, one is we mentioned the Justice A.P. Shah enunciation of privacy principles. I think they're worth looking at, and some of the points that you're raising do get covered in terms of usage. And I quite like the analogy Mr. Vijay Kumar drew, that this is like IT is like nuclear technology. So on the one hand, there's reason to let it grow, and on the other hand, there's reason to see that doesn't go out of hand. Well, those are the thoughts for the day. Thank you.
Thanks a lot all. I would like to thank our esteemed chair and panelists for a very interesting and fruitful discussion. Now we'll break for tea and we'll reassemble here at 20 minutes from now.